Hi everyone, it's Carolyn. Today I am here to share more messages about my awakening journey. This video is the second video of 3 stages that I have been through. Today we're going to talk about Dark Night of the Soul. Now, these 2 videos that I've created are for anybody going through this journey. However, I've created them primarily for people who are coming through new to this journey, whether you're coming through to it new now or months or maybe years later. You may find yourself going through the same process. And the reason I'm doing this now is because I have recently realized that my awakening journey began much further back than I thought. In actually the most recent past, I thought my journey had begun, honestly, in 2016. And then I realized it had possibly begun in 2010. And oh no, recently I have realized it was actually 2001, which I reflect in my first video for you that talks about my awakening journey. You can find that where it says part 1. But 2001, where we had 9/11. I go back that far to the very beginning stages of my journey. And the reason I feel this is important for us is this is the story of our lives. This is the story of our journey, our awakening journey. How wonderful to be able to go back and go, oh my gosh, then you start putting pieces together. Because honestly, it is later in your journey, most often, where you will start seeing the pieces of the puzzle that are put together that you didn't understand previously that actually led you little bits and pieces of crumbs to your full-blown awakening journey. So I'm Carolyn. I'm a channel. I'm a distance energy healer, and I offer these channels for your awakening journey support. Oftentimes I will provide light keeper channels who are a group of angelic beings I channel for your awakening journey. Sometimes I'll get on here with myself and just talk about a topic like I'm going to do today, and other times you'll see me with Celeste, my friend and colleague, where we will channel together for your journey. So it's all about the awakening ascension journey that I offer this information for you. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. I'm going to talk about my dark night of the soul. So this is the part of the journey where many people, and I in particular, became consciously aware that something had shifted and changed. I was no longer the same, but I didn't understand it because I didn't have a clue what the awakening was. So when you go to my first video, see that I actually started in 2001, then I had another kickstart in 2010. But then 2016, with the passing of my partner, who I honestly had only known less than a year, and that story I will tell you about here kind of briefly here in a second, but that woke me up, all right? So my human self and higher self were working to get me to the point where I was adjusting and shifting and changing in my habits and ways of being and living and my thought processes and what I was aware of. But that other switch hadn't gone on yet of being wide awake so that I'm consciously aware, oh, and then find my way to understanding that there is such a thing as spiritual awakening. That's what the dark night of the soul did for me. That's what it does for many. It snaps us awake through a very traumatic, oftentimes, situation that we go through. In my case, it was the passing of a loved one. And that can just wake us up like nothing. And I'm here to tell you this virus situation we are in now with COVID could very much be that dark night of the soul for many people. So today I want to talk a bit about my dark night of the soul, which is my third phase of my awakening journey, the one where I became consciously aware, my gifts opened up, and everything started to happen from there. So we're going to talk about that today and how it transpired for me, and I'm going to give you a little taste of what my experiences were. So first of all, as I had mentioned, it was February of 2016 when I was blasted wide awake with the death of my partner and who I had helped care for over the past 10 months, who had brain cancer, glioblastoma brain cancer. And 98%, I think it is, of the people do not recover from that. They also only live approximately 14 months. And without going into our detailed story, because I have talked about this before, it is also in my welcome video to a degree, but then it's very extensively in my email list, initial videos that you receive if you join my email list. So you can do that by going down to the description box below, and you can actually sign up for the free video on flow on how to create that in your body for health and wellness. But it leads you to more videos I've created. So I hope you'll join me. But anyway, I'm going to briefly talk about that today. So what happened is that journey of 10 months, when I had met him, we had only had 1 month together as, I guess I would just say, in good health, just getting to know each other as friends, really. So the 10 months that I had known Kent was a very short amount of time. Most people would not have raised their hand to have someone move in with them after just a month and a half of knowing them to battle glioblastoma brain cancer. I suddenly found myself raising my hand immediately without any doubt or question, saying, move in with me, we'll battle this together. Well, little did I know, and I never questioned this once, but I've reflected back on this many times, little did I know I would be his sole caretaker for 10 months of glioblastoma brain cancer, 2 brain surgeries it included radiation, chemotherapy, horrible healthcare battles and prescription issues, and all kinds of other extraneous things that would come our way. And I had said during that time, we don't even have a weekend where we don't have to worry about something. And it was typically pain medication that he would run out of. And so consequently, I went through 10 months of caring for somebody who essentially had a terminal illness, although we didn't look at it that way. All right, we always looked at it as he was going to recover, and it wasn't really our head sticking in the sand. That's just what we kind of felt. And in some ways, I feel like our higher selves helped us feel that way to get us through this, because the journey was about launching me off into my awakening. He came into my life very specifically to take me to the next phase of my journey. Now remember, I was unconsciously awake, but not in the way I would be after he passed. But what happened that is very interesting, and I'll just leave you with this and then we'll move on, is when he got his MRI results back, when this was first diagnosed, they said to him, this brain tumor has only been growing for 5 weeks. And I remember later on thinking back on that, because when you're in the thick of things, you're not thinking about this. And plus, I wasn't awake. We don't connect those kinds of dots. And you're going to find that in your own journey, that you're not going to know necessarily when these things happen that they were a contributor to waking up. You're going to go down the road a piece and you're going to look back and go, oh my gosh, this is my journey. And this is why it's important to really understand your full-blown awakening journey, because you someday may be helping others through their awakening journey as well. And what better way than to tell your story? So what happened later on is I realized 5 weeks before he was diagnosed was when we started communicating fully. We had had a couple emails beforehand, but 5 weeks before, guess what? This was all set up, and some of you that maybe rolling your eyes at me thinking, well, how could that possibly be? Our souls work in mysterious ways. We come in with planned incarnations. Certain things happen in our lives for a reason that we do not understand as humans. But when we start to wake up, we start to look back and understand the puzzle pieces that fit together that were not of human persuasion. They were supercharged by something else, by the universe, your higher self, whatever you want to call it. He started to grow that brain tumor right when he met me. And we traveled the journey together through the next 10 months. I then had to deal with him entering hospice and going through what I would call the first stages of dementia. And I quickly realized that's what I was now dealing with. And within that amount of time, things quickly took a turn for the worse in January of 2016. And without going into all that detail, because like I said, I could do a whole bunch of videos on this, and I have covered that in my email list videos that you would receive if you want to sign up. But the detail of that is he went into hospice and quickly made a turn for the worse, ended up moving home with his brother taking care of him, and passed away after having moved out of my house. And I didn't see him the 2 weeks after he moved out. And suddenly I get a contact from his brother saying he has passed away. Now, mind you, his family had not been involved. He didn't really have a very big family, and it was just one of those situations where he didn't want anybody else to know and bother anyone. And honestly, this is the interesting part. I didn't understand that while I was going through the journey, but boy, I understand it now. When I look back, I'm like, this was supposed to be our journey together. This was our journey together. It was for me to be able to launch forward. There's also some past life information, and I won't go into all that detail, but that I was also, because, you know, there's all these multiple reasons why things happen, right? But I was also reclaiming a past life where I was actually owing him some things. And so in doing that, I was taking care of him. But I didn't realize that until later on, until all these puzzle pieces started to come together over the years. So the brothers took care of him. But basically, I didn't see him from the 2 weeks he left my place after having been together 24/7 every single day. And I had quit my job in between that time, right? So I am, during this journey, everything is falling apart for me. So what you want to know as you're going through this awakening journey, oftentimes our whole world kind of comes shattering down. Now, some of you that may not happen to, but many of us have everything fall apart. I met Kent during the same 10 months. I was in a career high position that I had never imagined myself in and had just started that job. I quickly quit it a year later, no job, and then he passes away. This is all within 1 year. Everything breaks down. I am then on my own fully and totally. That is when my dark night of the soul happens. So understand too, not everybody will have a dark night of the soul. You may be consciously and wide awake and aware during the first few phases of your journey and not have had that shattering consequence. But many of us have to go through that. It's almost like, they've shown me before where like you get your little, like 2001, my little like knock on the door, right? Well, I didn't hear it at all. But things did start to change, right? 2010 rolls around. They're knocking harder at the door, right? I'm aware that I'm learning and shifting in my views and my perspectives, but I wasn't consciously aware of being awake or even what spiritual awakening was. I was not cracked wide open. And then guess what? Then they hammered down the door with my dark night of the soul. So again, I go back to not everyone's necessarily going to have a dark night of the soul, but when you do, you can be guaranteed you're going to know it. I do know some people have gone through multiple dark nights of the soul. I don't have any real frame of reference for that, so I'm just going to speak to my journey. When I did have my dark night of the soul, which again, as I said, is a traumatic event typically, all right? It's designed to consciously wake you up. Start your signs and messages coming most often. And that was how it worked for me. I had nothing before that. And to help you become very aware that this is your journey moving forward. Now, my journey in the awakening led me to using full-blown intuitive gifts. All right. Not everybody's journey is that, but we all have mystical, magical things that happen. So what happened with me, and I'll get to how I ended up where I am today, but the point is Kent's death shattered me. I was broken down. So this is the very first thing that happened in my third stage of my awakening journey to make me consciously aware. He passed away. I was devastated. I wasn't with him when he passed away. Just go on and on. Grief, guilt, the whole bit. And my progression from there had everything to do with what I'm doing now. And this is now 4 years later. All right. It led me down, really what they showed me was the yellow brick road. They gave me the Wizard of Oz and showed me the yellow brick road. But this was a natural progression. Very, what I would say, warp speed for me, at least, in the sense of what I had been through and had never had an understanding of anything mystical, magical, intuitive ever in my life before. So what happened is the first thing that occurred was my mediumship abilities just skyrocketed. Well, I didn't know anything about mediumship, but I sure knew that Kent was here. He had not left. He was making his appearance regularly. There were objects around the house that were his that I had cleared out. I have a very clean house. Things were just showing up, popping in when I would have awarenesses. He was trying to make himself known, trying to help me understand we can communicate. We can communicate. Well, I didn't know that. I didn't know any of that beforehand. But my point in this is he was knocking on my door saying, "You're wide awake now. I'm still here." He passed away late February of 2016. I went through grief for a few weeks, solid grief for a few weeks, joined a grief support group, and then quickly realized within literally a month, he was with me. I started to feel joyful. I started to feel like he's not gone. He's here. This had been my first experience with anything like this. I then moved into being able to converse with him, which was really interesting because I all of a sudden heard one day as I'm walking through the house, "We're going to help heal people." I didn't know anything about any kind of healing other than medical healing. I didn't know what Reiki was other than understanding that Reiki was some kind of energy modality. I knew nothing of this realm. All I remember is that stuck in the back of my mind, okay? Didn't think anything else more of it, but he kept communicating with me. So after a dark night of the soul, what will happen is you will be awake to certain things that you have never been able to experience before, potentially, or they will rocket off even more. I didn't have any mediumship ability beforehand. I didn't know anything about this. I was as naive as you can get. And yet I was so interested in this journey. And I was an explorer, as an adventurer. So what you're going to get is you're going to get your first signs of waking up consciously. Something's different. What is happening to me? I am not the same. I'm hearing Kent. I'm hearing voices in my head. I'm having objects show up. And it was all over the place because what he was trying to explain to me is, this is real. I'm still here. This is your journey forward. I'm not leaving your side. So this was my kickstart. You're all going to have your own kickstart, whatever that is, okay? Lots of people see the numbers first of all. I didn't see the numbers for a few months, which was really interesting. And then they just rocketed off the charts. Numbers, colors maybe become clearer. You may find that you get more ringing in the ears. I mean, it's all over the map, the symptoms. You may have a greater sense of smell, taste. You may start seeing your intuitive gifts launch off like I did with mediumship. And the thing is, I was wide open to it. I was like, let's do this. Let's do this. Plus, I had gotten through the grief process, which human emotion, if we're traumatized by something, and that's how our awakening journey really launches off through that dark night of the soul, if we hold on to the heavy energies that can be created from that traumatic event that humans experience, if we hold on to the grief, if I'd stayed in grief, none of this would have happened. I had to come out of that. And I did when I realized that because that's not their vibration, right? That is not the vibration of the higher realms. They cannot connect with us. So many people continue through that process of deep grief or whatever it is of the emotion that came from the dark night of the soul. You can get stuck in that. So keep that in mind, okay? As you are moving forward in your awakening journey, are you stuck in the emotion that the dark night of the soul caused? Or are you moving out of it like I did with respect to the grief process? Because when I moved out of the grief process, this is when he showed up. This was when everything launched forward. And I just began to follow it like I was on a superhighway. I was moving like a supernova and I didn't stop. Every little sign and message that came to me, which is why I was supposed to be unemployed. I was supposed to follow this for my journey forward because I was supposed to be doing what I'm doing now and which will continue to unfold as I keep going through this journey. So from there, it was the Kent era, I guess I'll call it, right, of my dark night of the soul. But the next phase that happened to me is the huge signs and messages that came not just from him. You all are going to start seeing a lot of this, but you're all going to have your own different signs and messages. In the dark night of the soul, after that, things will have launched off so much that your messages and signs will become very clear to you. Numbers will show up. The 1111s, the 222s, the 333s, the 444s. Some people get a wild combination of numbers that they just see all the time. You may also, as I mentioned, some of the other things that will happen. You may start getting connected with angels, which is what I did. Well, I didn't know anything about this. I was having angel signs in spades. Doves in the sky, in cloud formations. I would have at least one or two a day. I had dove feathers everywhere. I had angels actually appear. And I think I've done videos on some of these, but needless to say, I had angels appear. I have pictures of these. I have momentous things that happened for, like, I would say the next year, but that first summer was unbelievable. So this theme was, okay, Kent's here, mediumship. We're going to practice our mediumship, right? So I didn't know this at the time. Then we're going to have the angels come in. We're going to have this made very clear to you through many things happening, lights flickering, books showing up, me reading, finding certain people online to read more about angels. I wasn't looking for this. It was showing up. And those of you who have been through this journey and are listening to me understand how this just unfolds. So if you're going through this awakening journey and you're at different phases of this and you landed on my video, know that in a certain phase of your journey, you're going to have signs and messages just laid out like platters of food on a table for you. And you don't have to go fighting to search for it. It will just show up because now your consciousness is coming to the surface to guide you, not that human self. As we go through this awakening journey, Your higher self, your soul self, the trueness of who you are, comes out from this buried status, okay, of being smothered by the human world all those years to one degree or another in each of us, and it starts rising to the surface and leading you and showing you those signs and messages. So mine were in spades all over the place. But the thing is, somehow I knew what to do with them, and it had nothing to do with my human mind saying, I need to figure this out. I need to work it. I need to figure out why I'm doing what I'm doing. Things just happen in a way that you can't describe and you may not be able to fully put together until you're going down the road. And that's the whole point. This is a now moment exercise. When the thing gets put in front of you, follow the inspiration. This is why they always give me Wizard of Oz. Follow the yellow brick road. She took one yellow brick at a time. Think of Dorothy skipping down her yellow brick road and stopping and then looking around and experiencing, then stopping and looking around and experiencing. That's what this journey is. You don't look down the road to what the castle is at the Wizard of Oz and who's behind the curtain. It's all unfolding as you move forward in your journey. The yellow brick road, one step at a time, comes at you. And as you follow your inspiration day to day, when those signs and messages come, you're going to start putting things together. So out of the whole angelic doves showing up in spades for me, I realized, oh, something's up with angels. And then my hearing, my clairaudience had really ramped up. So these signs and messages that had to do with angels were coming for, I would guess, a good 6 to 9 months, where I realized they were there, but I did not understand that I was supposed to work with them. That is why they were trying to make me aware of this. So lo and behold, my next phase of my journey is my gifts waking up. All right. So yes, the mediumship had started. Yes, I was starting to hear things, but then the full-blown happening occurred, where I then move into 2017. This was January and March, respectively, for channeling and the energy healing modality. The channeling came in a blink of an eye when I sat down with a group of women that I was on with every Wednesday as we're trying to kind of get connected with like-minded people. And we went into meditation afterwards in each session. And the first session, the moderator said, let's just see what we get, and then we can share it when we come back. I came back with a full-on channeled poem. I had never done that in my life before. And what I realized was this was different. It was very angelic, but I couldn't understand it, and I didn't understand it was coming from the angels until I went to Sedona on a trip where they showed up, stopped me in my tracks on a solo trip to Sedona, came in, basically said, we are the light keepers. We are here to channel messages through you for those who are awakening. And that's exactly what they said. I will never forget it. And I said, oh, okay. And then I started putting two and two together, is why I started getting weekly channeled messages that kind of sounded poetic. They were trying to help me understand that, but they had to, again, knock me on my head and find me in Sedona on a trail just as I'm getting ready to leave that day. And I also had a healing experience. I had 2 healing experiences where I had to actually heal myself. So I had to put into practice my channeling. They had to make it very clear. No, we're the light keepers. We are going to channel through you. We're supporting those who are awakening, which is how the YouTube channel started off a year later. I collected the channels. I started the YouTube channel because I knew I was supposed to share them. But in the meantime, back in that 2017 Sedona trip, I was supposed to be made aware. So what's going to happen for you all, particularly if you're on a journey to use your intuitive gifts for the greater good, is you will see a progression of your gifts, particularly if you've never had them before or been aware. We all have them. We're just not aware, right? Or we haven't, I guess I would say, schooled yourself in them, right? Or honed them. You will see them gradually unfold to this point where you're aware of how this is to unfold. Me, I was to work with angels. I was to channel. And guess what? I was to energy heal. I ended up with a modality that landed in my lap, which is a long story and very magical, but just suffice it to say, I had to practice on myself. In Sedona, when I was knifed basically by a cactus, I was basically poisoned by the cactus, and I had to heal myself that night. And it happened literally within probably about an hour. with energy healing, which I didn't even understand at the time. So understand the trajectory here. What will happen if you are going through this dark night of the soul and you get blasted wide awake, you will start a progression. Many are going through warp speed progressions right now, so be aware of that. You may be even faster than mine was. A progression of opening up to not only potentially your intuitive gifts, but signs and messages that then will very likely be showing your pathway forward for the rest or a good part of your awakening journey. And in that case, there are many things that you will be getting as far as signs and messages that may be saying to you, oh, this is guiding me to do X, Y, and Z. Oh, and it may have been something you never imagined in a million years. You didn't even know anything about, like me. I had no clue of this world. Zero, none. I'm the most unlikely candidate to be doing something like this. And so consequently from there, what you're going to find is as you put the pieces together, you're going to be able to sit back and say, oh, I have this passion, this inspiration I'm following, and you're going to feel like you want to move forward in this journey. And then you're going to keep following the yellow brick road of what they're putting in front of you. And regardless of how fantastical it might seem, it may also have been something that you had always wished you could do, but you always set it aside as not being possible in our human world, because we do a lot of that in our human world. The passions and inspirations we had when we were younger that we set aside, they may become flying back at you. You might not be one that's going to open up your intuitive gifts to, build like a energy healing business like I have and channeling business. That's not necessarily what everybody's going to be doing. That was my trajectory. But the trajectory is that you will get signs and messages as to what is going to unfold in your journey forward. And honestly, it may be as simple as you working on yourself, becoming the best version of yourself. It doesn't mean everybody's going to create a business out of this, but it does mean that you are being set up for seeing things, signs and messages, numbers, being able to understand that. And one of the most important things that I have found on this journey was to document all my signs and messages. And honestly, today I was going to share with you some of my input on my 170-page journal that I have from having documented every single day signs and messages that came my way. But I realized that that would take too long and it wouldn't be appropriate for this particular channel. Someday I would love to just sit down and read to you, although I don't know if you'd find it interesting. That's what I just don't know. I mean, I don't know, of the magical things that transpired since the Dark Night of the Soul, because that's when I started really writing everything down. But needless to say, documenting this so that you can find your way forward, regardless of whether you're going to build some big business down the road. Again, this isn't about making money, but in my case, it was about creating a business that would allow for this to transform. Everybody's situation is going to be different. Everybody's journey is different. Some people are here just to wake themselves up, to be able to become a better version of themselves. And do you know what that does for the rest of humankind? If everybody could do that, then we wouldn't have any problems in this world. Everybody would work on themselves and become the higher version of themselves. So understand that whatever your trajectory is, whatever it is, don't try to go figure out, oh, I have to go create a business. Just know that follow your inspiration, your passion, where your signs and messages are going. Because what will happen is this will unfold after this big dark night of the soul. Okay? Now, remember, not everybody necessarily has a dark night of the soul, but I will tell you right now, it's a profound moment in the awakening journey that will blast everything open for you. And it's almost like you're just, okay, so what they're showing me, and it's not all these fun and happiness, as I told you, with the dark night of the soul, but they're showing confetti coming down. It's just like sparks and it's confetti and everything, like you are engulfed in it, guiding you forward. Now, after that, after the first 2 years, I'll have to tell you, I got into creation mode, okay? Because there is this mode then that oftentimes we get in of creating out of all of what has happened in the awakening journey. Now, not everybody's going to necessarily do that, but there is a lot of that happening, all right? Because we're transforming the world in which we live. One awakened person at a time, right? But if you're transforming yourself, that is transforming the world. So don't sit here and think, oh God, she started this business and has a YouTube channel, and I have to do that. No, You don't have to do that. You're going to know what you need to do. But what I want to share with you, though, is that at some point in time, and this can be a little disturbing, your signs and messages are going to kick back. They are going to move into the background because it's basically, like I was told, well, we know you've got this. You get it. Because the first period of time, and particularly for me, I had to really be hit hard. I didn't live in a world like this. I didn't understand anything mystical and magical. As I said, I knew nothing. So consequently, they were giving me signs and messages right and left. Plus, they were trying to tell me, this is your journey forward. This is what you signed up to do. Well, I wouldn't have had any natural inclination toward that. Some of you are going to have a natural inclination because it's a passionate thing. It's a thing you wanted to do, but you always set it aside. Not me. I had to really get super signs and messages. But here's the thing. For all of us, they do have a tendency to slow down, all right, in the way that they were coming previously. However, what I have found is you will then go through likely a phase, and this is kind of hard to figure out when this happens because they can be complex. Your signs and messages become more complex. They are almost like putting stories together. They are not the simple things like the dove feathers showing up and or the cloud formations I'd see in the sky, or name any gazillion of number of things that might seem more simple to understand. These become more complex. They become more like a story. They become the smaller ones become lesser, and you don't receive those as often. You then start moving into, as you're going through this awakening journey, a higher frequency, higher vibration space. You start moving into this time where you are bringing in the energies that are offered through the earth and that are offered through our interplanetary system, our solar system, and are offered to those who are awakening and to the rest of humankind. But we seem to feel them more. We are impacted by them more. You're going to become more consciously aware of the physical aspects of what's happening with you, the shifts and changes in your own body, and you're going to get more complex messages. Okay, you'll figure them out, but don't try to work at it. All right, it's just going to happen. But know you're going to have a downturn at times. Don't get worried. Nobody leaves you. Your spirit team, your angels, and your guides, which we all have, by the way. You may never hear them, but you may. They're there. You can always talk to them. Just know that you will have a downturn very likely, and it can be very. I spent many sobbing nights not understanding that that's what this was all about. And then I realized, oh, I'm at a different level. I'm at a different stage. They're more complex. They don't need to babysit me as much, I guess I would say. I have the connection made. I'm higher vibratory. I don't need to be pulled up into that high vibration by being given signs and messages all day long to make me happy and joyful. I find my way there through meditation, through other high vibration activities. I know how to do that now. All right. I've advanced. I've grown in my awakening journey. This will happen to you. There is no time frame for this. Do not get frustrated with the amount of time. People have gone through this for years, and it's taken them that long to get to where they kind of understand it now. Others are going through warp speed awakenings. Mine literally was kind of a warp speed awakening, but people now that are awakening now, and who knows, you guys may be watching this, 4 years from when I published it, or 10, or, right now when you're awakening. And you need to understand that you're probably waking up in a warp speed way because more and more people are waking up faster and faster, okay? In the past, it was more of a slower trajectory. And then in my journey, starting in 2016, in the sense of the dark night of the soul, that happened fast. However, my early journey wasn't fast. And I think you will find that your early journey, before you became consciously aware, it had kind of started to trickle in. So the reason I offer all of this to you today is so you can understand the full breadth and depth of your journey. It is so important because what you'll do is you'll start looking back as you move further down your journey, and you'll put other puzzle pieces together. Like a big one for me was I put together all of my international travel I did. I was like, oh my gosh, now I know why I went here. Now I know why I went there when I was so not awake, right? But I was when I say so not awake, my soul self was taking me to these places. I was selecting these places to go to. It was my soul self doing that, but I wasn't consciously aware. The human wasn't aware and wasn't working with the higher self. When you become consciously aware, the human and the higher self work together, which is the goal in this journey, is that we have this journey of awakening where we are embodied by our higher self, but we're working in our human form in that beautiful way with unconditional love, higher vibration, understanding that we're in this journey together, the human and the higher self. So this is the trajectory you start taking, where you are awake then, and then you embody that in all that you do. And that's a journey in and of itself, because we continue to move forward in our awakening journey. It never ends. We continue to learn, we continue to advance, we continue to grow in vibration. It never ends. So just know, as you're moving through this journey, don't expect to, oh, one day I'm getting to my goal and I'm done. No, that does not work that way. Life is full of growth. The awakening journey is full of even more growth. And just know, it's full of beauty and grace. It's full of tough times. It's full of learning. But it's what we signed up for during this most important time of ascension and awakening. So I hope you have enjoyed this conversation today of my journey of moving from full unconsciousness back in 2001, of knowing that a mass event, which could very likely be the virus for you, mass event shakes a whole lot of the population awake, but no one understands it. Maybe some do, right? And then we move forward into our awakening journey, and we move forward like I then did into a second phase of awakening, where I talked about how I was finishing up a relationship and then being able to realize, oh my gosh, this time is about me, for me, which many of us will find. And then you become consciously aware, if you're not before, through the dark night of the soul. And there is no doubt that you will be made consciously aware. And then you move forward on this beautiful journey of awakening that is at the same time one of the toughest things you may have ever gone through, but one of the most beautiful things you can ever imagine in a life journey. Thank you so much for joining me. And as I always offer you, my services at purplerainhealing.com. Visit me when you can. You'll see my distance energy healing, my 3 different channeled messages options, where I channel prolifically throughout all of these sessions for your awakening journey, helping you understand your soul journey better. And also, I offer spiritual awakening mentoring, which helps you through this whole process, as well as help you work on some of the goals you may have if you're further down along your journey. So I would love to work with you. So reach out to me if you're interested at purplerainhealing.com. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video.